Hello and welcome to a new episode of Cat Talks. For this new season, Cat Magazine is partnering with Forbidden Colors, a Belgian non-profit working on empowering LGBTIQ+ people in Europe. I am Vincent, and as Outreach and Policy Officer at Forbidden Colors, I will be your host this season, joined by my colleague Rémi Bonny, the Executive Director of Forbidden Colors. Hello Rémi, are you excited about this new season of Cat Talks?
Hello, Vincent. Yes, we're very excited and we're very happy that we can partner up with Cat Magazine here in Brussels.
For the first episode of the season, we are in the European Parliament in Brussels to have a discussion with Marc Angel and Kim van Sparentak, two members of the European Parliament, or MEPs, as we say in Brussels, who are also the two co-presidents of the LGBTI Intergroup. Marc, let me start with you, as you're the longest-serving co-president. You are an MEP from Luxembourg, sitting with the Progressive Alliance of Socialists and Democrats. Marc, how are you today?
Hey, I'm very fine, and thank you to both of you, to Vincent and Rémi, for inviting me, and I'm happy my new co-chair, Kim, is with me today. So, no, I'm okay. Happy to be with you guys.
So let's introduce now Kim van Sparentak. Kim, you're an MEP from the Netherlands, sitting with the Greens. Welcome and thank you for joining us. How are you today?
Thank you. I'm very excited. This is one of my first gigs as co-chair of the LGBTI Intergroup.
So before we start and enter the discussion, I will turn first to Marc. For our listeners that might not be familiar with how the European Parliament works, can you explain to us what is the LGBTI Intergroup here in the Parliament?
Well, the LGBT Intergroup is a grouping of 156 members of the European Parliament from 5 political families, and we defend, of course, and promote LGBTIQ rights within the European Union, but also outside the Union. Intergroups are not official committees, not official bodies, but they exist. There is many intergroups. There's a trade union intergroup. There's a children's right intergroup. But the LGBTI intergroup, we are really the strongest one and the biggest one. And we put together our means. We have also a coordinator so that we can be very active also in the legislative work of the Parliament when it comes to LGBTI questions. We also liaise with civil society. This is very important. We are bridging civil society, and not only civil society from the Brussels bubble, but also civil society in member states, especially member states where the situation is more difficult. So the last years we've been in regular contact with civil society in Hungary, in Poland, in Bulgaria, and in different countries, and I think this is good. And by the way, last week we celebrated the 25th anniversary of the LGBTI Intergroup. There is already many MEPs before us, Kim, who were very active and founded this intergroup. And I think it's our duty now to continue that good work. And especially now with backlashes, which we are living, it is more important. When I started this in 2019, I thought, oh, this is relaxed. This is just a few issues we have to deal with, and I didn't know that it was such a big agenda, and that there is all these backlashes, the anti-gender movement. So we're very busy, but we don't complain about this. We're happy to be activists.
Yes, we'll talk about some of the backlashes. Just a question for Kim, as new co-president of this intergroup, what do you hope to bring with your presidency? What is the energy you're in right now?
Yeah, I think it's a bit related to what Marc just said. You know, I on the one hand, you know, I feel quite a responsibility also because our previous co-president Terry Reintke did such a great job in really putting forward, you know, the LGBTI rights and putting it also at the front of a lot of debates in the European Parliament and on the European level. But at the same time, you know, if you look at what is happening in Europe, like on the ground, you know, the news isn't great. You know, we see that there's more and more, you know, political parties who are pushing against, you know, rights for minority groups and very specifically tackling and targeting the LGBTI rights in several member states. And I think it's there's a lot of work for us ahead to keep monitoring that, to keep staying in touch with civil society in these countries where we see indeed this backlash going on, and at the same time keep pushing for more rights on a European level.
Thank you. And let's jump on our first topic that will link beautifully with what you said, because Pride season was back in full force this summer in Europe after the interruptions of COVID. Yet the situation at Europride in Belgrade last September, when the march was banned a few days before it was supposed to take place, then being reauthorized last minute, showed us how much effort is still needed in some part of Europe. So you were both there with us in Belgrade. What was your experience on the ground?
Well, we were very annoyed by this hesitation and also the contradicting messages which came from the Serbian government before the Pride, but also during the Pride and after the Pride. We already intervened as the intergroup on the end of August, where we sent a letter when there was rumors that there will be no march, and that's a no-go. You cannot organize a Pride or a Euro Pride, any Pride, a small Pride, a big Pride, Euro Pride, World Pride, without people marching, because this is a fundamental right also. And then we already immediately addressed the letter, and then it was till the last minute we did not know, can we march, is it okay? And then even afterwards, the interior minister said there was no march. We just accompanied some people to a concert. So, and there again, we sent another letter to complain about this, and this was annoying. On the other hand, we felt we were safe because there was a lot of police in riot uniforms, and it was a bit scary to see that. It was impressive to see that, but the atmosphere within the march and within the conferences was good, but the atmosphere around was rather disturbing.
I spoke also with quite some activists who came from outside of Serbia, and they were really telling me like this was one of the first times they felt like, oh wait, we are threatened as a community because we needed that much police. But I think in general, the feeling indeed, politically is still very ambiguous. They did protect us, but indeed with what messaging around it. But I'm very happy that we managed to have this march, and also that we managed, with the presence of so many people from, who came to Belgrade specifically because this march was challenged, because this Pride was challenged, to also convince a lot of people from Belgrade to come onto the streets. And I spoke with several people on the march that told us, like, if you wouldn't have been here, then I'm not sure if I would have marched along. But because we knew that there were a lot of politicians, there were a lot of people from outside Serbia who came specifically for the march, I felt safe enough. So that is, it's always this sort of contradictory feeling after you've been to any Pride that has been challenged. That on the one hand, it's a sad fact that the march is challenged and that the Prides are challenged, but on the other hand, you always feel how strong the LGBTI community is, and that then also gives me always a lot of hope and energy to continue the fight.
So did you actually feel that it was a victory in the end, what we did and with Europride?
The fact that we marched and the fact that the Prime Minister said that we could march, that was a strong message. But on the other hand, as I said, these contradicting messages was not good. But I think it would have been horrible if they wouldn't have let us march. We marched, we were singing, we were on the streets waving our flags, we were hugging people, we were hugging a lot of Serbians and a lot of people from the Western Balkans. This was, I think, also important for the whole region, and that was really that was really good. So I am quite happy. But I wanted to add something. This is a tradition of the LGBTI intergroup that MEPs and politicians go to prides which are a bit more unsecure, or where there is risk of riots, etc. Because if we go, then the country organizing or the city organizing or the region organizing is providing more security, not only for us, but the security benefits, of course, the whole Pride event. So there's a tradition, but I hope that in the next future we can just go to prides to be part of the conferences and to have fun, and that there is no security issue. This is what we thrive for in our daily work.
Yes, and I think also by going to these countries where it's difficult, you're also showing and you're being an inspiration as well, because I mean we have seen over that the intergroup has been copied in other countries as well. We have now an LGBTI intergroup in the Hungarian parliament, we have one in the Polish parliament. So the European Parliament has really been an example for that.
On Prides, I don't wear the rainbow flag, but I wear the European flag. I think it's very proud to wear the European flag during these Prides to show these are the European values. These are the values which are in our treaties. These are the values which are in the Fundamental Rights Declaration, etc. So this is also, I think, an important message if we go to be there with the blue and the 12 yellow stars around us.
Yeah, and yeah, indeed, I cannot agree more by saying that, right now we as politicians go as some sort of extra human shield around activists, and I can't wait for a moment where that's not necessary anymore.
This brings us to the next topic we wanted to discuss. A few weeks before we went to EuroPride, the European Commission announced an infringement procedure against Hungary for their anti-LGBTIQ plus propaganda law, a law that was copy-pasted from Russia, and that is basically banning any kind of promotion of LGBTIQ plus issues in places where children could be. The could be in the sentence is very important, because if we look to what effect this very law had in Russia, this basically meant the entire destruction of the LGBTIQ plus movement, that we as community were pushed into the underground. So I think, first of all, it was good that the European Commission announced this infringement procedure. But maybe for listeners who don't really remember the entire course on EU law, maybe I'll come first to you, Kim. Can you briefly explain what an infringement procedure actually means?
Yes, and it's actually not that complicated. We have laws in the European Union, and the European Commission, besides proposing these laws, they also have to defend these laws. And if they see that a certain member state is not adhering to the laws, then they can say, hey, you're not adhering to the laws. And then if these countries don't listen, then in the end, they can also start a lawsuit. But that's an infringement procedure, is basically saying, hey, you're not abiding to the laws. And if you don't take the necessary steps, then we will start a official legal procedure against you. And in this case, there are several laws that are being not followed by Hungary on media. Like, besides the fact that they're just breaching basic fundamental rights, of course, there's also like a media law and e-commerce directive, and they're very specifically looking at all these different laws.
Yeah, because the law that was passed in Hungary last year is prohibiting LGBTI plus promotion on TV. So in fact, there's a directive on media that prohibit any discrimination on media content. So yeah, that's why the Commission is attacking. Do you think the Commission is pushing hard enough? Do you think the process is going fast enough? Because the law was adopted last year. So immediately after the Commission starting to have a discussion with Hungary, a year after they're starting to say we'll launch a procedure. What is your point of view from the European Parliament on that? Do you think the European Parliament could do something to push the Commission more?
We really pushed them, and the procedure was a bit slow, I must say, but we wrote letters, and we had also we had hearings with Commissioner Reinders and also Commissioner Dalli, and we always pushed for this. And then finally it happened. I think the Commission was a bit afraid they wanted to have total legal certainty, and they were hesitant. They shouldn't have been hesitant, because I think the breaches are very, very clear. And I think Kim very well explained the infringement procedure, where when European laws and treaties are not respected. But in this case, I also see one thing which is not respected. It's the UN Charter of Children's Rights. Because if you forbid in school talking in sex and relationship education, if you forbid talking about comprehensive sexuality and gender identity, this is not good, because if you have good sex education and relationship education, people are more resilient. They're more resilient against abuse, even also sexual abuse. They are more resilient against stereotypes, etc. And you make them stronger. So I think the mission of a nation, of a state, of a government, is to strengthen their children and their youth. And this is not done by this law, because it's forbidden in schools. And this is also a danger for young people who are queer, be it if they're trans persons or homosexual persons. There is a risk of committing suicide. The risk is much higher. And I remember when I spoke in the plenary on this, I accused them of having blood on their hands, because there is lives at stake when it comes to this, and that's really, really a pity. And this cannot happen in the 21st century in the European Union.
Yeah, and I think it is very showing that the Commission indeed they announced the infringement procedure, and they have announced a lot of good initiatives over the last years. But at the same time, we see that everything is going very slow. I mean, I want to give one example now on this very infringement procedure. While indeed they have announced during press conference in this year that they were going to go to court, they still did not file the court case. While already they have worked on the legal arguments for over a year, and they are very sure that they are going to win the case, especially on the parts of the anti-propaganda law that they have targeted. At the same time, we see that they have not targeted other things that Hungary has done. One thing is, for instance, they have not started an infringement procedure on legal gender changes, which is also going against the Services Directive, which is also very much clearly in breach, and so on. So you see that the equilibrium that the Commission is trying to find is still not going into the right direction, I think.
We will continue pushing.
Yes,
and
for sure.
I'm happy to have Kim on my side and all the other colleagues, and count on us that we will push.
Well, maybe another topic we wanted to touch upon is this new proposal from the Commission that is expected to arrive soon also on extending the list of EU crimes that is defined in the treaty, so all the crimes that are considered EU crimes, to extend this list to hate speech and a hate crime. What do you expect from this proposal, from what it can bring and what it can bring for the LGBTI plus community?
I was very happy when it was announced 2 years ago that every time the Commission, and especially Commissioner Dalli and also Commission President von der Leyen, when they mentioned this directive, they also said hate crime and hate speech also when targeted towards LGBTIQ persons. And I think this is important because they know that LGBTI persons are, and other minorities, of course, and especially within the LGBTI community, the queer community, the trans people are the most vulnerable and are often key targets for hate speech and hate crime, especially the trans community. The last year, this has risen. I mean, and we see the result. There has been crimes. We had crimes in Germany, in Münster at the Pride. We had a crime in Bratislava 3 weeks ago. So this is really good that this will come. I hope the Council will not block it. It's a recommendation from the Commission to the Council, and now the Council has to change this list of Euro crimes, and the Parliament is backing this with a huge majority. I think this is this has not been a discussion apart from for of course the far right and some very conservatives, but there is a huge majority for this in the Parliament.
Yes, maybe just for our listeners, so how it works. You have two chambers in the European Union, the European Parliament and the Council of the Member States, and this list can be only extended by the Member States first. So when the Member States will agree that this list of EU crimes can be extended to hate speech and hate crime, then a new proposal will come, discussed this time with the European Parliament about the sanctions, harmonization of sanction, of practices in all Member States. But first, we need the Member States to act and extend the lists. Yeah,
and that's also what is the problem. Because we know that on other very important legislation that could have really helped to strengthen the rights of LGBTI people, the Council, because they need unanimity, that's how we call it, but it basically means every single member state of the European Union has to agree. They've been blocking a lot of things, and also with this, you can just see it happening again. That also Hungary and Poland will again say no, we cannot agree with this, and that's, I think, something very worrying. Of course, isn't a reason to despair or something, but it is something we really have to take into account. That yes, it's a big sign of hope that the Commission has proposed this, that we're really going to try to go forward to really make this indeed a Euro crime, which means also that it has the same legal status in every member state. So in every member state you can feel protected if you are a victim of hate speech or other hate crimes. But yeah, the problem is still that we will have to see if the member states are going to agree on this.
And therefore civil society in the member states have a role here to play and push their governments, push their parliament, national parliaments. It's not only us here in Brussels who do European policy, it's also in member states where this happens. And therefore, we really support the civil society and the activists, the human rights activists, the LGBTI activists in the member states to push their governments, to push their national parliaments to really make this happen. We've had resolutions on this in the parliament, which were all, as I said before, positive, but now it's on the member states to play, and I have trust in our civil society, and also in some national parliaments. We have, as you said, an LGBTI intergroup in Poland, an LGBTI intergroup in Hungary. Okay, they belong to not to the majority, not to the government parties, unfortunately, but they can push together with civil society and make it a public subject, and having a discussion in their country that this is important to protect young people, to protect women, to protect vulnerable groups, because hate speech, we know it leads to hate crime. That's always the result. And we see that a lot of politicians, high-level politicians from populist right parties and far-right parties, they use hate speech every day in their speeches, and the result is hate crime by some of these followers, and therefore it's good we have this proposal, and it must be adopted. It will be hard, as Kim explained.
Yes, and I think it's important to say as well that's I mean, now we're going back a little bit to our class on EU law maybe, but by adding hate crime and hate speech to the Treaty of the Function of the European Union, you need unanimity in the Council indeed. But at the same time, after we did that, you only need a qualified majority to add sexual orientation and gender identity to the Eurocrime list. So that's the interesting part of it. I would like to see Hungary and Poland say that they don't think anti-Semitism, for instance, as a crime in the European Union, because that would basically be what they say if they don't want to add hate crime and hate speech to the treaty, for instance. So we have some leverage on these governments as well, and we think that's why we really need the Commission to go forward with this.
You mentioned quite right, anti-Semitism, anti-Gypsyism, etc. All this. I mentioned before the hate crime and hate speech when it includes also targeted against LGBTI people, but it's against all the targets. And there we have a different debate with the Hungarian and with the Polish government. You really mentioned this quite rightly.
We don't only have a new president in the LGBTI intergroup, now we have for almost a year a new president in the European Parliament as well, Roberta Metsola, and together with her, you as LGBTI intergroup has worked to secure that next year, for the first time ever, the European Parliament will host a queer summit in June, I think, next year. So let me give the floor to one of you to explain a little bit what's going on.
To be very honest now, this was the wonderful idea of Terje Reinke, who was the co-president and who motivated me so much. She was already co-president in the previous legislature, and she motivated me, but also you, Kim, and that was her idea. And we were very happy when Roberta Metsola was elected president of the European Parliament. She immediately asked to meet the presidents of the LGBT intergroup, and Terry and I, we were received, and we had a discussion with her and some of her cabinet members, and then Terry proposed this idea, and they said, oh, let's continue the discussion on this, and one person of her cabinet who is dealing with special events was in contact with our coordinator, our fantastic coordinator, let me name him here, Miguel Chambel, who does excellent work, and we've discussed this in our bureau already, what he gave proposals how this can be. So this is going to happen next year. But I think it's also very important that we include civil society, also the Brussels civil society. We cannot do this without other partners. And I think the idea is to have in the plenary a big summit with members of national parliaments, members of the European parliaments, but most overall activists from all the member states. And I would also suggest the member states who are candidate countries, who have the status of candidate country, so that we can have a really debate on this, and I think this will be a wonderful opportunity. Also, a year before the next European elections, that I hope all political parties will see that we need to strengthen LGBTI rights, to defend them, and that LGBTI rights, just like women's rights, are human rights and nothing else. We're not fighting for some extras. It's just same rights and no discrimination. That's it. And I think this will be a fantastic opportunity to pass this very simple message.
Yeah, I'm super excited because indeed we really want to create a lot of space for civil society, also to meet, also to learn from each other, best practices. Like for example, imagine if you're a city councillor from some place and you've done something great for the LGBTI community, that other people can just also learn from that we can create networks to strengthen each other. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, and I think that it won't be some boring policy discussion, but really a beautiful, empowering event that shows all the colors of our rainbows.
Well, thank you. We are reaching our last topic, which is in cooperation with Ket Magazine, which is a queer magazine of Brussels, to ask you a question about your life in Brussels, because you don't come from Brussels, but you spend a lot of time in Brussels. In the last years, did you have a time to experience the queer life of Brussels? What do you like about it? What inspires you in Brussels?
Well, I was lucky enough to catch screening in the Pink Screens this weekend, so that was really, really nice. It was a beautiful movie about someone from Poland, a gay activist from Poland, or gay artist actually, who was fighting in his rural community for some understanding on his position. And afterwards, we connected with a lot of other beautiful people from the LGBTI community, and I think that you have these events that are so well attended is really great, and it's a very nice atmosphere always when you are at different LGBTI events. I really enjoy it here.
Yeah, what I of course, I'm coming from Luxembourg and you're from the Netherlands, so we are Benelux. We already feel like very welcome here. And I came already to Brussels a lot before being a member of the European Parliament, so I always loved Brussels. By the way, Brussels was also a bit of a reason why I wanted to become a member of the European Parliament and leaving the national parliament. I've been a national politician for many years, but as you say in French, blague à part, I really, as Kim said, the cultural programs also for LGBTI subjects is amazing, but also just the fun and going out in Brussels is also wonderful. Brussels still has a good offer of LGBTI bars, many gay bars. I don't know so much about other lesbians, but there's now this queer bar which opened where the whole community comes together with a lot of non-binary people, which I love, and trans people. I think it's called The Agenda. Can I say the name? I don't want to make publicity, but this is new, and this is I think this is also important that the scene evolves. There is an evolution. There's the Rainbow House, this Brussels city or the government. I don't know who sponsors this, but you see there is they care about their community here, the city and the local government, and I think this is good. And I must admit, I was never bored here in Brussels, be it a Monday or a Friday. There is always something if you have time. Unfortunately, we lack a bit of time.
Yeah, that's really the problem, Mark. Maybe we should make this a personal priority to explore more.
Yeah, that's why every 6 weeks my partner comes up from Luxembourg and we spend a weekend here to profit from this fantastic offer this city has. And plus, it's very international, but I must say one thing about the Belgians. What I really like, they are, what you say in French, des bons vivants. They like to drink, they like to eat, they like to party, and you can feel that in this city, and that's why I love Brussels.
Well, it's time for closing now. Thank you very much to Kim and Mark for joining us today for the first episode of this new season of Ket Talks. You can find more information about Forbidden Colors online at forbidden-colors.com, and don't forget to check the website of Ket Magazine for all the news about queer life in Brussels.
And don't forget to look at our website from the LGBTI Intergroup. Very easy. You Google European Parliament LGBTI Intergroup and you find all our social media.
We'll be back very soon with a new episode of Ket Talks, and thanks for listening.